Well, let's bring on Phil Ward and Cory Feco now from the DOICoin.com. How are you both doing today?
We're doing fantastic, Toby. Thanks for having us in.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant, Toby.
So, the DOI coin, what is it all about?
So to summarize a very big concept in a very short period of time, we were looking at the crypto revolution and we realized that it was often confusing to most people, if not everyone. No matter how far you are into the crypto revolution, there's always something constantly changing, adapting. People are just trying to grapple with it. And most people have no ability to even jump into it at all. And those who do understand it, many of them aren't able to be in a financial situation to obtain it. And we recognize that that left a lot of people behind. And whenever we consider ourselves, which we do as an organization, consider ourselves at this point in history where we have the opportunity to remake society in a way that is by and for the people. And we believe that the Web3 revolution, having the ability to create more decentralized communities with sets of values and rules that can benefit them, and they can organize themselves around, and they can collaborate with digital property rights and the beautiful things that you can have happen whenever you're engaged in a crypto community. We recognize that there's this giant hole, this missing puzzle piece in the middle for everyone, for basically everyone else minus the 2 or 3% that were actively, truly understanding what they were engaged and involved with and able to change the course of history with. So we knew that we needed to create something that, one, made sure it benefited everyone, regardless of whether or not they understood crypto or, for that matter, even purchased any, that this rippled out into their world and made their lives better. And two, for those who are actively engaged, gave them the opportunity to choose where this revolution goes. So it's for them and not just led by a bunch of meme coins or big organizations or governances that aren't taking the time right now to recognize what's actually best for us decades and centuries in the future. And so all of that came together as we asked ourselves, okay, well, how do we do that? And that's what kicked off the DOI Foundation and then the DOI Coin, which is the fundraising token for the DOI Foundation. And that was the genesis of it all.
Yeah. And I suppose there's a bit of an overlap between people that don't fully understand crypto and people that simply aren't interested. So how do you actually get those people on board?
Yeah, that's a good question, because there are a lot of people that just aren't aware of what's going on, and that is one of our sayings, kind of, or a mantra, is no one left behind. Yeah. And we really believe that it is our obligation to bring people into it, because whether or not you know that this new financial infrastructure is being built, it is being built, even if you're not aware, and it's going to affect your life. So we saw that people were going to be left behind, and we thought that it was an important thing to do to bring these people into the conversation also, and to start off with offering educational stuff. And that's a lot of what our podcast does, is educating just on terms, on Web3, on blockchain, on cryptos in general.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you think that cryptocurrency is the future?
Well, I mean, I think one important question to ask yourself is, what do the powers that be, so to speak, what do the people who are already in charge of the current financial system, what do they say? And by droves, billionaires are flowing into it, and huge capital is coming into it. So it is, we believe that it is, and also they are claiming that it is, right? There's a lot of people that are saying it's here and it's here to stay.
Yeah. A few years ago, when Bitcoin suddenly became this big thing, a lot of experts were saying it's going to crash and you better not invest in it because you'll lose all your money. And that didn't really happen, did it?
No, it didn't. So now those same experts that were all saying that, well, not all of them, but a lot of them were saying, well, this is something that's not gonna have staying power. They're changing their tune every day. Every day they're coming in with big announcements that, oh, well, we do see this is going to be around, and we do see the relevance in it. So that certainly has changed a lot.
Yeah. And is there still a risk, though? Because like all currencies, I suppose it goes up and down over time.
Yeah. I mean, sure, there's a risk. There's a risk with everything, right? All of these things kind of have some kind of inherent risk with them. I mean, there's risk in the dollar, right? In the fiat dollar. If you're holding a dollar in your pocket today, you've lost the inflation value of it just over the last few months. So there's a risk associated there also.
Yeah. So in terms of DOI Coin, how are the funds actually raised?
The funds are raised through the sale of the coin, and then they're kept into a transparent treasury. And that's the crux of raising funds. So Cory, why don't you talk a little bit about the fundraising capabilities, the potential of it, and go a little
Absolutely, Phil. So I'll jump into that. This is a very big concept to grapple with. And during this podcast, we want to really try to take this and break something big and meaningful into its simplest parts. But it really came down to an underlying question whenever it came to funds being raised through the DOI Coin sales. I want everybody who's listening to this ask themselves a question. What if all the money that was raised from Bitcoin sales, from Ripple sales, from Ethereum sales, what if instead of it just going from one pocket to the other, to the other, to the other, back and forth, what if whenever the organization put those coins out into the market, let's say Bitcoin, that those funds were put into a transparently held treasury wallet, which is in the case of the DOI Coin, and then the world got to decide on the most impactful, ethical, and sustainable ways to find, fund, and fix humanity's most challenging problems with the funds that were raised there. What would happen? What would happen if with the hundreds of billions and now trillions of dollars that flowing in, what would happen if we all looked around and said, what's the most meaningful way that we can collectively decide to actually shape the future that we want? And then now with the Web3 and voting mechanisms, for those who aren't super familiar, you can kind of just take little drinks of the water from the fire hose here and just try to follow along with us. We won't get too deep, but you now have mechanisms like DAOs, so which the DOI Foundation is a DAO, and you have mechanisms like DAOs where you can vote on collectively what those things look like, and also vote on the committee members to help you understand and determine what is ethical, what is impactful, what is sustainable. So as those coin sales go into the treasury, which the whole world can see every single transaction in and every single transaction out, and it is according to the guidelines of our Constitution, our obligation as an organization through the coming centuries to make sure that it's always transparent, to be able to be scrutinized, and it's always the DOI guardians, which are DOI Coin purchasers, active members of the DOI Foundation, people who want to make sure that this is buying for the people. And that could be anybody with one DOI coin or 1,000. It's their duty and obligation to scrutinize every single transaction that comes in and out to find if there's any mistakes, or for that matter, if there's players in the coming years that come in and try to adulterate the vision or use it for their own ends, to make sure that any of those treasury funds are not going where they're not supposed to be going.
Yeah.
And in that way, it's a simple concept. Back to its core, though, DOI Coin sales go to a treasury. The treasury is used in the most impactful, ethical, sustainable way possible to find, fund, fix humanity's most challenging problems.
Yeah. And about the community as well. Communities are very important when it comes to cryptocurrency, aren't they, really?
Truly, yeah.
And how do you actually build a community?
Whew. Now, isn't that a complicated question that I think all of us are grappling with?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, I would say the clearest way to me, historically speaking, is to have a compelling vision and a mission that the people of the world, or the people of whatever community you're trying to build, whatever that size group is, it could be just inside of your local town, or whatever area you're in, or around whatever idea, belief system you have, or whatever things you want to change or solve. The community doesn't have to be everyone, but in our case, we wanted to include everyone on the planet now and for centuries to come. But at the end of the day, in order to build a community, you have to have something that the community cares about enough to dedicate their energy, their time, and to be so passionate that they want to go out and they want to grab somebody by the shoulders and say, hey, I know you're in the middle of buying your bread at the grocery store right now, and you're a stranger and you don't know me, but I heard you talking about how you don't feel like you have any ability to change the system that you're in, but hey, you can. I'm part of this organization right now, and what we're trying to do is actually actively take and solve those kinds of problems. Wouldn't you like to feel like you aren't powerless anymore? And to be able to have those kinds of conversations where people feel empowered, they feel connected, they feel compelled, and they have a clear way to speak about it to anyone and everyone that they meet. And if you have that, then communities over time, whether that's over the course of weeks, months, or years, they'll build themselves.
Yeah. And also, you have a Discord server, don't you? Is that a good way to keep the community together?
Yeah, we have found it quite an impressive tool. And, for anybody who listens to this and you want to come over and join, we're at the DOI Foundation on Discord. and you're gonna find yourselves inside of a community that's already established. We have already got a really nice community built out. We've got a lot of people in here with a lot of talent and some really dedicated folks they're already dedicated to the vision and the mission. And so we would invite you to come over and join into the community, and it's a really good time and informational, right? We spend a lot of time educating and getting educated because we're all learning together.
Yeah.
So this is moving quickly for all parties involved, us included. What the Discord will look like, whether or not it's Discord, if it becomes one day Telegram, or it becomes Twitter, or it becomes some combination of a variety of other things, or it becomes on some app that doesn't even exist yet. We know that we will adapt to whatever the best way possible is to communicate amongst one another as a group in the most effective way. But we also know that the way in which we're doing it will change as we learn what the community needs. And also as the community starts to take it over and it becomes all of theirs, we know that those mediums will change, and also too the value that's provided on all those different connection platforms will change. So even if you go onto the Discord, which by the way is discord.gg/DOI. So that's the address on our Discord if you want to go straight to it. If you go there and you're like, hey, I feel like I really like this, I'm still missing a little bit of that, I'd like to see more of this, that's great. Come on there, jump in, help out, provide your ideas, become a part of this, shape this into what you feel like you want and need, because whatever it is today, I can promise you right now, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months from now, nevertheless 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years from now, it's not even going to resemble itself, because we're just going to be continuing to adapt to give people what they need.
Yeah. And would you say that as it grows, there's sort of no going back? It's like an egg. Once you fry it or whatever, you can't put it back to an actual egg anymore.
I mean, I've done that a couple times, but my parents never appreciated it. But yeah, that's truly it. We had this conversation early on, and Phil, maybe I'd like to hand this over to you about basically whether we succeed or fail, where we hope our failure looks like. And I feel like this is really a really beautiful story that you tell well about kind of what we think will happen even if we don't succeed.
Yeah, I tell you what, a lot of people would say, well, why would you have a conversation about failure? And, failure is an important part of learning. It's an important part of life. And we have not set up to fail, but we still sat down and had a realistic conversation. And when we came to the point that we decided that if we were to fail, but we progressed a conversation that included all of humanity into this new financial system that was being established, then we didn't lose. We won, right? At that point, it would be victorious, even if it stopped there. And, we have established this and set this up for the long haul, right? We have no reason to believe that we will fail. We're not building it to fail, and we're not setting up to fail. But when you ask yourself, when you set off into an endeavor, if we fail, did we do good? And really, when we came to the decision that even if we were to fail, but we engaged the world into a conversation, and we just shaped the conversation, then indeed we would have won and humanity won.
Yeah, absolutely. And as well, you've stated that it's a crypto project that's the only one of its kind. It feels like a lot of projects are saying that. So what is it that makes it different from all the others?
I would say I want to go even further out, if I may.
Ooh.
And I'll try to do this quickly. And of course, Toby, if you feel it's relevant to deep dive further into an aspect of this, please do. But I want to go further out and to say, not only is it the first crypto project of its kind, this is the first point in human history where anything like this, to my knowledge, and we've done some extensive research, where you now have the opportunity to build out a community that has an equal say, no matter how much wealth that they hold or how much storage of crypto asset or whatever, insert, medium of exchange here. They have just as much say as anybody else through the ladder. So first and foremost, there's that, because we all know the golden rule, those who hold the gold make the rules. And that's been like that throughout the course of time. The DOI Coin was set up to be, the DOI Foundation with the DOI Coin was set up to be one wallet, one vote. So whether or not you own 4 million DOI Coin or one, you have just as much say on whether or not an initiative should receive the funds necessary to go fix humanity's most challenging problems or not. And the same goes with the committee members. We have the impact committee, the ethics committee, then the efficacy committee, and the treasurers. You have just as much say on who should or shouldn't. And when I mean shouldn't, you can vote those leaders out in live time. Should or shouldn't be in their roles. To my knowledge, that's the first time that's actually truly in practice been there. I mean, it's said in theory, but then you have things like the Electoral College, and then you have things like lobbying for, raising funds for political campaigns, and you have all these mechanisms around it where basically those with the most funds and resources are still the ones who get put into positions, still the ones who hold the control, still the ones who make all the rules. And that's just part one. On top of that, we're part of this unique point in history where with the Web3 revolution, you now have the ability to create digital property rights that are layered over all nations. So long as the world accepts, let's think of like NFTs, digital property rights that don't have to be housed underneath an individual governance, but it is accepted by all governments, even though individual governments will make their own rules and laws and how they will execute upon those laws for citizens living inside their country. But otherwise, the rules of an NFT still apply no matter where you're at in the world. And for that matter, people, not to get too far into the future, but as people move beyond the world, potentially, those NFTs still house themselves in some universally accepted property rights. And that's a unique point in history. So you can now apply that to a Web3 community and say, okay, those property rights apply to not only DOI Coin holdership, any assets, but they also apply to voting rights. And as we get out into the world, we can now start solving problems that could never be solved before with the DOI Foundation, with the funds raised from the DOI Coin. It's never been a point in history where you can look around and say, okay, what don't you like about the world that you see? What do you like? What are things that are actively trying to solve those problems? What things, if they had more resources, could go out there and do it? How can you put your thumbprint on it to make sure that it's buying for you? This is the first point in human history where you could do that. And this is the first community in human history that is designed and organized to do that effectively with the amount of thought and care that we put into it to say, okay, we can collectively determine what those things are. We can collectively solve problems in a way with Web3 property rights and solving problems with communities that you can now build and give rules. You can create rules into smart contracts. You can create property rights into smart contracts. You can put voting into smart contracts. It doesn't matter where you live. And can create all these things and create this whole umbrella where we can now look at each other as a human species for the first time and say, hey, no matter where you live, no matter who you are, you can collaborate with somebody 2,500 miles away in live time, and you both have an equal say, but also to an equal awareness of what's actually happening, the problems to be solved, and collaborate in a cohesive manner that if you even need to define those rules into a smart contract, you can, to solve a problem collectively. There's never been a point in history where you could do that. It wasn't even technologically possible. We weren't even that connected with one another. We used to have newspapers 100 years ago that would give you, a couple lines about like, in today's journal, man takes horse across Kansas. It's like that,
right.
That was the history we were living in not too long ago. Now it's live time connection, collaboration. And we're the first project that's ever taken this concept and said, hey, what if we, the people, create this thing that's buying for us? How do we define that? How do we create that? How do we ensure that this lasts for centuries? And like all things, our ideas, I'm sure, are not perfect, because at the end of the day, even if they were perfect, which is unlikely mathematically, even if they were perfect for the moment they were created. Well, the world has already changed just in this podcast. Yep. The world that we lived in whenever this started, it's different now.
Changes so fast all the time, right? It's just a constant change. And Toby, it might seem like a lot of information to absorb. And this is one of the reasons that we put the podcast together, right?
Yeah.
Because as we go out on this adventure together, and we are all in this, humanity is in this adventure together, whether the people realize it or not, you will be a part of it. And as we venture out into this, we needed a platform, and we felt like the people needed a platform to come and learn honest information and to be able to break it down and really learn about it. So we've put together the DOI podcast. It is a family-friendly podcast. It's somewhere where you can come with your children even and learn together, because it's going to affect their lives definitely. So a lot of information to absorb, but we do invite anybody to come over and join the podcast and then get more informed and educated together.
Yeah.
And to that point, Phil, and one more thing, Toby, then I'll kind of close. I'll tie up with the ribbon where I was going with all that and then hand it over. To that point, Phil, I'm glad that you said that, because even if it was perfect, it's going to change in lifetime. The difference is whether or not we are actively, like we, the people, are actively part of educating ourselves, and we have a say in where it goes. Because at the end of the day, whether or not you understand this, whether or not this is overwhelming, whether or not you want all these things to happen, all you have to do is go to cbdctracker.org, watch the news go into the news and follow crypto for 1 week. And the amount of changes that will happen in that 1 week will be so overwhelming. I know Phil knows, because we call it education, entertainment news. The news is so huge. Like every single day, it's like this country is adopting Bitcoin. This giant financial institution is doing over-the-counter trades. This country is, creating their own system for CBDCs, and they want to define the rules in this way to, for their population, how they can spend their money. And it's like, these are huge. Like any one of these, like 20 articles that came out last night are world changing, to the point where whether or not you understand it or want to understand it, like if you can, you should at least start to go on that journey and find a place where you can make a difference, where you can have a say and go, well, you know what? I can either have these things happen for me or to me, because they're happening. So they're either going to happen to you or for you. We created the community where we're going to do our best to make sure that it's happening for us.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah. Well, where can we check out DOI Coin and the podcast and the Discord server? Just remind us of that and everything that we need to check out.
Yeah, well, you can always get over to the website, is the doicoin.com, and that's DOI. And you can get us on Telegram. We're on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, all at the DOI Coin. So it's pretty simple. Cory, you want to spit that our Discord name out again, or the actual address?
Yeah. So for those of you who are familiar with Discord, everything is an address of discord.gg/something. So ours is discord.gg/DOI.
There you go. And you can get us, Toby, you can also get us on Spotify, Apple Music, Google Play, Podbeam. We're kind of everywhere, and we will keep adding to that list as time goes on, so you can get the podcast just about anywhere.
Great. Well, many thanks for joining us today. It's been great to have you both here.
Yeah, thanks for having us in. It was awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.